Do you want to write and create engaging, great blog posts? Well, we got you covered here. In this lesson, we're going to go into 17 tips for writing great blog posts. So without further ado, let's get straight into these strategies. The first one is images. To write and create engaging blog posts, you want to include images. If it's all text, people might not read everything. So you want images to engage people. And this also applies to when you share these articles. When you share them, often a thumbnail will be available with the link. So if you have an image, you'll see that thumbnail of that image when you share it on Facebook, for example. And then when you're reading it, it breaks up the text very nicely. So it's great to include relevant images that are related to the subject matter that you're talking about. And here are some resources to find great images that you can reuse. So you want to use public domain images that you can reuse for free, so you're not infringing on any copyright laws or anything like that. The first is Shutterstock. Shutterstock is a paid service, but it has a great resource, a huge database of images that you can use for your purposes. But there's some free options too. Pexels.com, that's Pexels, that's a great resource. Pixabay is another great free resource. And you can even use Google Images. When you search for images on Google, there's an option under Tools where you can look at usage rights and then sort it by free to reuse. So that will give you only images that you can reuse that are public domain images. So that's another way to find great images to use for your blog posts. Visual flow. So I just hinted at this. When you write blog posts, you don't just want to have walls of text. You want to break things up. So use short paragraphs, include images, include lists, include diagrams, things like that. You want it to have a nice visual appeal, because if it's just, like I said, a wall of text, people might be discouraged from reading it at all. So keep in mind visual flow when you're writing, and you want to write with a flowing tone. So you want to use like one shorter sentence, then maybe a longer sentence, and then you keep switching it up so it doesn't get monotonous to read or look at. Conversational tone. A lot of times with blogs, you don't want to write in like a college essay type of tone, unless that's what you're going for, unless you're an educational, professional website like that. But in general, you want to write with a conversational tone. And this humanizes your brand. This lets people know that there's someone behind there. And people like reading in a conversational tone because it's more relatable as well. So there's no need to get caught up in using too many big words or sounding overly professional. Conversational tones work the best online. So keep that in mind when you're writing. And a good strategy to do this is to read everything out loud to yourself as you write it. If it sounds conversational, if it sounds like you're talking to someone, if you're talking to a friend, then that's good. Make it about the reader, not you. So this is, how can it benefit them? What are they going to get out of it by reading it? If you focus on that, you're going to create much better blog posts. So it's not all about your brand or you or anything like that. It's about how it's going to benefit the person reading, because then they'll find a lot more value in it and they're going to value your brand more as a result. Make it shareable. So a lot of these other factors contribute to the shareability of a post. Things like images, making it about that person, making it relatable. All of these different factors make it more shareable. So it gives people incentive to share that post with their friends or share it on Facebook and things like that. And as you're writing these posts, as you're creating blog posts, keep in mind for ideas to make it more shareable. So what would people like to share? What would make people look cooler or more knowledgeable or anything like that in the eyes of their peers? So keep that in mind when creating blog posts. And if you combine all of these factors and all these tips, your posts will be naturally more shareable as well. And that's going to get way more of a reach and drive traffic to your website, and of course get you more customers and build your business. Clear sections. So this ties into what I described before, visual flow. You don't want to write everything in one big block. You want to break up your post so it has sections. You can create headers. You can break up the sections with images. So you want everything in clear sections for people to read through. And if someone skims, you want them to find what's most relevant to them. You want it to be easily findable for them. So clear sections are another important aspect of blog posts. Skimmable. Like I was hinting at just now, people tend to skim articles online. Most people will not read everything word for word. So if you do things like you have clear sections, it will allow people to skim through and then find what they want and then dip into that section. So keep in mind that people will skim through your posts. So make it so that you can give them value even if they're skimming, or that something catches their eye even if they're skimming. Cite your sources. Whenever you make any kind of claim or you give a statistic or something like that, at least link to the source of your claim. And it doesn't have to be in some professional standard format. All you have to do is basically link to that source. You could just say, as according to Wall Street Journal, and you can link there. It can be as simple as that. Just make sure you cite your sources and link to them. And this will really give you a professional reputation, because if you're making claims without backing it up, that's unprofessional and it's not very credible. So you want to build that credibility and build that trust and establish yourself as an expert in whatever niche you're in. Listicles. Listicles are basically articles that are lists. For example, almost like this video, 17 ways or 17 tips to create great blog posts. That would be a listicle. 15 ways to meditate. 27 ways to train your dog. Anything like that, that's a listicle. So you have a list and the blog post is based on that list. And listicles allow you to easily implement everything we're talking about here. Visual flow, clear sections, skimmability, all of that stuff. Listicles are great for that because it breaks things up into specific points. Use lists. Again, going back to listicles. So you can have the whole blog post being a list, basically, as a listicle, but in any blog post, you want to include lists whenever you can. So whenever you have a few points that can be made, write a list. Create a list in that blog post because it makes things really easy for people to read and see, and it makes for a great reference for people. Controversial. It's also a good idea to provide a controversial perspective on something. Write something that's unpopular or demystify something, or write an opposing viewpoint to what is common sense or what most people are talking about. If you can write an opposing viewpoint and back it up with credible evidence, this has the potential to go viral and people will be intrigued by it. People will be excited to read and hear your perspective as well. Storytelling. Us human beings love stories, and stories captivate us. So people will be excited to read stories, and stories are compelling. Not only that, stories build relationships. If you share a story about your brand or yourself, people will relate to you. That will build that connection and allow people to see you in a different light. And of course, you can make it related to your business. And in this way, you're building that relationship while talking about your business or making an offer or giving relevant information for people. So include stories as often as you can, because storytelling is one of the best ways to build relationships with people. Don't lose sleep over length. So there are successful blogs that have really short blog posts. There are also successful blogs that have really long blog posts. So it's not necessarily the length that determines the success. So don't get hung up on the length. It's basically whatever comes to you and whatever's the most relevant and whatever allows you to provide the best information, that's what it is. So don't obsess over having a 3,000 word blog post, because that might not be the best for your audience. So especially in the beginning, experiment with different lengths. And also keep in mind that people don't like to read that much text online. So a shorter format might actually be better. But get experimental with this. You don't need to have rigid rules in terms of length. So see what works for you and try out different approaches. Ask what people want on social media, or you can even do this in blog posts or through your email list. Ask people what they want. What solutions are they looking for? What problems do they have? And when you get feedback on this, you can write blog posts about that. So a blog post could literally be an answer to something that someone asked you. And that provides immense value, not only to that person, but that means that a lot of people probably have a similar question. So you're going to directly address what people are looking for. And that's where great content comes from. So don't be afraid to ask. Write a great title. A title is perhaps the most important part of a blog post. So some of the best bloggers actually spend most of their time writing the title, the headline. You want to create a compelling title. You want to really generate interest. You want to intrigue people. You want to get people to click and read your article. So there are things like controversy, like I mentioned, being controversial. Any controversial title will get people to click. Maybe a question, maybe a solution to a common problem, maybe a list. All of these things get people's attention and get them to click. So get creative. Spend a lot of time crafting a great title. And you can even get feedback on this too. Write out a few titles and bounce that idea off of different people, get feedback on it, and use what you think is the best one. So spend a lot of time brainstorming and writing titles. And this is a skill too. The more you write headlines for your posts, the better you'll get at it. So it's really good to practice. Hook with first sentence. The first sentence of your blog post needs to hook people. They need to get excited to read what you're saying in the rest of the blog post. So you want the first sentence to really captivate them, to capture their attention, and then to get them to read further. And the best way of doing this is something short and punchy. You don't want to start with a really long, drowned out sentence. You want to start with a short sentence that's going to catch people's attention. Call to action. At the end of your blog post, create a call to action. What do you want people to do? What action do you want to take? What action do you want people to take after reading this? Do you want them to check out one of your offers? Do you want them to sign up to your email list? What do you want them to do? Tell them what you want them to do. This is a call to action. If people read all the way through, and even if they skimmed all the way through, they're going to look for what to do next, and you can tell them what you want them to do next. So this allows you to build out your funnel. You can transition from people reading your post to getting them on your email list, or to getting them to check out one of your offers or your products or things like that. So always have a call to action at the end of your blog posts. And that's it. That's the 17 tips for creating great blog posts. Start implementing these and you'll be able to create great blog posts right off the bat. So hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you in that next lesson.